So the latest novel, Heart of Fire, has been out for a while, and oh my god, we got some juicy reveals. But for a book that advertises Flameheart's origin story, we get surprisingly little of that. And the stuff we do get was a little underwhelming and doesn't really do justice to the main villain of the game. Is this really the case, or is there a lot of subtext that hints to his true origin story? Let's find out. And also, you should subscribe to this channel, because it makes me happy. Also, if you haven't read the novel, you should, since there will be major spoilers in this video. It also helps understanding the context a bit better. If you don't care, that's fine, but I will judge you for not reading it. Nah, just kidding. Or am I? Either way, there be spoilers ahead. So Flameheart's origin story in the novel basically consists of just one chapter where we learn he was born outside of the Sea of Thieves. He was basically a bully as a kid, hitting other boys with sticks just because he could. Eventually, when he was older, two men of the Grand Maritime Union came to his house after his father had been accused of piracy. Their possessions were seized and his father was told he could not serve his country. One time a ship came to their village and Flameheart killed its captain, to control himself, and took the name Flameheart. He sunk every GMU ship he came across and eventually made his way into the Sea of Thieves. There he found an infant, adopted him, but let him grow up outside the Sea of Thieves. Why he did this is not explained. Eventually he set his eyes on the burning blade, overthrowing the captain, and he and his crew drank from cursed chalices locked away in an obsidian casket. The curse slowly took hold and visits home became less frequent and less important. The crew had accepted their destiny and Captain Flameheart, the Skeleton Lord, was born. So this is just a quick summary, but overall I was a little disappointed how basic the story sounds. So basic in fact that I don't really believe this story is a full story. You might have heard this before from another channel, but there are some eerie connections between Flameheart and an ancient character called the Warrior. Specifically, we are talking about a warrior that fell in love with the Sea Queen. So not to be confused with the soul of the Great Warrior who we came across during the Silence Prize adventure. We know, for example, that Flameheart wants to take vengeance on the merfolk, but we don't know why. Well, we do know the Sea King and Queen had a war with the merfolk when part of the merfolk race transformed into sirens. And a journal also described that the mermaid gems being used to turn the warrior into the Sea King contained a fire within. And let's be fair, using the word fire to describe mermaid gems is just a little suspicious. And when we translate these runes on the Reaper's sails, they translate to Sea, King, Ship. A big piece of evidence in my opinion. And there are even more clues within the game, like a lot. And if you want to dive into them, I recommend listening to this podcast episode where we do discuss them all. But for now, let's focus on the novel again. Throughout the story, the presence of the warrior can be found everywhere. Or characters find paintings depicting the warrior, and other notable ancients like the king and high priest are rarely, if ever, mentioned. The focus is clearly on the warrior, which is telling considering this book is promoted as Flameheart's origin story. It's also confirmed that the Burning Blade used to be the only ship that had access to cursed cannonballs, and the weapon the crew of the Morning Star is searching for to defeat Flameheart turned out to be an ancient ship capable of resisting these cursed cannonballs, a ship that is presumably made by the warrior himself. I don't know about you, but I see a connection. But the most telling clue was actually Duke's origin story, which turned out to be the biggest drop of the entire novel. You see, Duke wasn't always a bilge rat or a member of the Dark Brethren. He works for Flameheart as a skeleton. Flameheart even named him Duke since he is fond of regal terminology, like styling himself king and his commanders lords, like the Ashen Lords. And keep in mind that the warrior also adopted the title of king when he transformed into, the Sea King. Near the end of the novel, Duke sacrifices himself to put a stop to Flameheart's reign. After his death, Duke wakes up on the ferry, which to him felt almost instant, but in fact happened about 10 years after he died. For those that aren't aware, pirates are known to roam the Sea of the Damned before they are allowed on the ferry, and most of them don't remember their time before that. Normally, the ferryman wouldn't give someone like Duke a second chance, but because of his actions, he did. But with a twist. Duke would be able to return in human form, but with his memory erased. And I'm pretty convinced that Duke's story is also about Flameheart. If Flameheart is the warrior, he might have spent some more time in the Sea of the Damned to make amends for his wrongdoings from his past life. And what we know about Flameheart is that he just wants to burn and kill stuff without caring for loot or seemingly any other goal. But what if he is filled with a burning rage and hatred but can't describe to himself why that is? Maybe because he forgot why he was so angry about. Like his memory was left behind in the Sea of the Damned, but his emotions remained. And how would you symbolize raging emotion? I don't know, maybe with a heart of fire or a flaming heart. I think you get my point. So is Flameheart the warrior? Well, if you would put a flintlock pistol to my head, I would probably say no. I mean, I do believe the soul of the Sea King is still trapped inside the chest of everlasting sorrows, and that is a big argument against this theory. But I have no doubt there is some sort of connection between the two, and I'm also pretty convinced we shouldn't take Flameheart's origin story at face value. At least, I used to believe that, until certain information came to light. In a recent interview on The Conversation, the writer of the Heart of Fire novel, Chris Alcock, shed some lights on the origins of Flameheart, in which he basically explained he did not want to write Flameheart as a sympathetic character. He also mentioned he came up with a Duke connection while writing this story. Duke's origin story was never really explored until he chose to do it. And in an episode of the official Unofficial Sea of Thieves podcast, we actually straight up asked Mike Chapman if there is a connection between Flameheart and the warrior. And this is what he had to say.
There's a connection, but not to the extent that people are theorizing.
Flameheart is not an ancient then?
Flameheart is not an ancient.
There we have it.
Can confirm that.
Yep.
He's not an ancient.
There we go. From the horse's mouth. There we go. Just ruined my theory.
So yeah, I think when listening to these episodes, it's hard to defend the Flameheart equals the warrior theory. Yes, there is some connection, but it won't be as big as we hope it is. But what does this mean for Flameheart's origin? Well, sadly, it seems the interlude from the Heart of Fire novel is to be taken at face value. We still don't know why he adopted a son, and his motivations to burn the Sea of Thieves don't go further than he is just a bigger bully than before. Or how Mike Chapman would say it, Flameheart became the pirate he was always meant to be. It also means the warrior that fell in love with the Sea Queen is probably just a warrior in the long line of ancient warriors, and his soul is indeed trapped in the chest of everlasting sorrow. But what is the connection Mike Chapman was talking about? If they are not the same person, what then? Well, some lore enthusiasts think there will be some merging of souls, and I do believe something like that will happen. We do know the Great Warrior is meant to defeat Flameheart, but I'm thinking he will actually be the cause of Flameheart's resurrection. Only time will tell. So, in conclusion, is Flameheart's story a lie? Well, actually, it's not. It seems some content creators were looking a bit too deep into the lore, and even though Flameheart is still a great character, he is simply less complex than we would have liked. And I do hope we get more insight into his motivations, but any character development I see happening will be in his story going forward and not backwards. But why the runes on these Reaper sails translate to Sea King ship is still a mystery left to be solved. But what do you think? Is Flameheart destined to be just an evil bad guy with no chance of redemption, or do you still think his connection to the warrior is bigger than it seems? Let me know in the comments. I always do my best to read all of them. So thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed my ramblings, leave a thumbs up if you like hippos, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.
Flameheart is through and through a pirate. Absolutely.
he was a pirate
Drawn and corrupted through power.
Okay, there we go.
Need to rewrite our videos now, but that's fine.
Yeah, put that to bed.
It's a
That's
great
fine.
theory, though.